Hi guys, it's your girl Jocelyn with another word. Dear state of Ohio, we the people want to know, how is it that your very own detectives can frame us, put us in jail, allow us to lose our babies in jail while they're out on maternity leave having a happy and healthy baby? Meanwhile, I'm stuck in jail with no medical assistance at all until I was released from jail after falsely being arrested. That wasn't enough. They made me take off my 1-year-old's diaper, put guns to my child's head, the father's head, and my head, with making me strip my baby's diaper off and searching my son for drugs like they had that right. I had just gotten out the hospital a few hours in the midnight hours right before they framed me. In fact, the detective said he had been watching me all weekend and know that I was innocent. He in fact followed me to pay my utility bill and to get my children something to eat. And he also admitted he needed me in the room to build a case against person who was charged with the crime, and even the person who was charged with the crime admitted to these things being his, told them to let me go, and they still refused. They promised to let me go after I put it on recording, and they still purposely kept me in jail for so many weeks, where I was not okay. I had not healed from being in the hospital a few hours before they did this to me. And when I got out of jail, I was at -4. They said once I hit 0, I would be done miscarrying. Please check out my past video, Falsely Framed as a Convicted Felon, which was one of my first videos that I put out that inspired me to tell my story today. Dear state of Ohio, and that wasn't enough, you guys kept the felony charges on my record for 4 years of my life, from 2010 to 2014, until I went to the same lawyer who I had when they falsely convicted me as a felon, who also told me I was facing 20 years, even though the real criminal was charged, convicted, and served time for that. And meanwhile, like I've stated, my charges was dropped without prejudice. And when that wasn't enough, and this same lawyer who represented me the first time told me that I was facing 20 years for something that I didn't do, until one of my siblings felt guilty in that moment to hire me another lawyer who got me out on a bond. The same lawyer that told me I was facing 20 years back in 2010, I had went to again in 2014, since he was very great friends with my oldest sibling and they played sports together. I said, hey, do you think you can represent me, because they still have 2 felony 1s, a felony 2, a F5, and a child endangerment on my record, and it's them being 4 years and I was never convicted. This same lawyer said he couldn't help me, which left me to file my own paperwork, send copies to everyone involved, represent myself in a courtroom for the judge to tell me those charges should never existed and that they were deleting them out the system. Nor did I get an apology, nor justice, or them paying me for the time that I had to work at underpaid jobs and being stuck in poverty. And I want my justice. The state of Ohio, 2015 inspired me to become a natural herbalist when our very own EMTs denied me services with refusing to come to my room and demanding for me to walk down 15 to 20 steps in my home. Meanwhile, they left me in the home, went about their day, and I was sitting there suffering from an ovarian cyst that was 6.5 centimeters that ruptured. One of the biggest cysts my doctors ever seen. Meanwhile, my mother had to rush me to the hospital, call them on my way there so they could meet me in the front with the wheelchair. After putting me through the CAT scan, rushing me back out, me screaming, please don't let me die, because I'm the only parent here to take care of 6 children. And without me, my children will be sad. As the nurse eyes is watering and she's promising me she's not going to let me die, I then pass out, wake up, and I done been cut 4 times with the scalpel in a whole different hospital, waking up fresh out of my trauma with a room full of people just laughing and celebrating as if they were not even violating my rights. And wrote a letter to the supervisor of the EMT after personally giving him a call and informing him of how they mishandled me, with him agreeing that they treated me very poorly and he apologizing. I also informed him that I wanted justice and to pursue with charges. I wrote it out and also went to the lawyer who got me out on the case in 2010 when I was falsely framed. This lawyer knew that he could not represent me for this, and he purposely chose to take on this case without informing me all the way until my time ran out. And I still have the paperwork. State of Ohio, I can't make this up when I say our urgent cares are racially profiling us. And I know for a fact because back in 2020, I caught COVID on my birthday. And I could not pass the test to go back to work for 2 months. And the more I couldn't pass the test, the more irritated the doctor became. Oh, this doctor was so mad that I kept coming back. He was saying things like, your job is stupid. Those dumb people don't know what the hell they're talking about, and just ranting, being very disrespectful. I could not believe what I was hearing. And I guess he was under the impression that I worked at an underpaying job instead of not knowing that I worked for a multi-million-dollar company, where he began to open up the door. And as the door is wide open and he's walking into the hallway where there's 2 boys and 2 nurses, he says just bluntly, you keep failing the COVID test. And I said, hey, you is violating my right. And he said, I don't care. They don't know your name. And I said, well, that's not the point. You're still violating my right. Can you get in here and close the door, please? After me going back and forth with him in front of other patients and nurses, he then finally goes back in the room with me, and the whole time I'm telling him that he isn't right. This doctor is looking down at my cleavage area until I get uncomfortable and says, excuse me, and walk out the door. At this point, I'm just trying to hurry up and get out of there as I hold my tears back. And as I'm talking to one of the sweet nurses at the desk and asking for this doctor's supervisor and who to contact to make a complaint on him, another nice nurse pulls me in the room, and I still have her name, and she says, he is rude like that to a lot of patients, with asking me, am I okay? And also agreeing that he handled me very poorly. And as I talked and reported him to his supervisor and also wrote a letter to the Ohio Health Department, I still have not heard anything. I also shared my experience about this under the comments on that Urgent Care's website and still have not yet received a call. That wasn't enough. Just last year, March of 2021, my son wasn't feeling well, so I did my own research and came to the conclusion that he was a diabetic, which I came to the same conclusion when he was 5 years old, but when I had him tested, he didn't have diabetes. So this time it led me to think that he had diabetes, since he drastically lost over 20-something pounds. His eyes were sunk in, his lips were very chapped, and he was very fragile and weak. I go to a different urgent care and inform her, hey, I know my son is a diabetic. Can you please prick his finger to check his blood sugar level? She knew her meter was broke, as she poked my son's finger about 5 to 6 times before she came to the conclusion that it was broke, with saying that he'll be okay to go home, with me informing her that he will not be okay and telling her to look at him because his eyes were sunk in, his lips were chapped, and he was very, very ill. And she said, well, if you're uncomfortable, you could just go next door to Kroger's and get your own meter, which I did. My son's blood sugar was 300, which was the highest the meter read. So when I rushed him to the hospital, they had the original blood sugar meter, and my son's sugar was 800, and he was DKA. Had I not rushed him to the hospital, he would have lost his life that night. And the hospital informed me to always use my mother's intuition, as they put 2 IVs in his arm. And when I went back to have a conversation with this nurse, the secretary, she says, oh, well, we don't like confrontation. And I said, I'm not coming with confrontation. I'm not even talking to you in a confrontational way. I want to talk to her as a woman, and I also want her supervisor's number. And I made a complaint. Yet again, I have not heard from the supervisor, nor the Ohio Health Department, and I have copies of my letters. I didn't understand when I came in was how she and her mother was just chilling in the back, eating Chipotle and hanging out like they were girlfriends, instead of her being at a place of employment. She was also the same nurse who did my son's COVID test that was required before going back to the gifted program that he's in, because he's a genius as well. And back then, she had pink eye, and her eye was watering, and she had no patch over it at all. And I'm not going to forget about my oldest son, because during 2020 pandemic, I told the juvenile detention center, do not give my son a narcotic drug. And the nurse gave him narcotic drugs anyway. And when he was released, I ended up getting a call from the drugstore with them telling me that his prescription was ready. And when I went over there to ask what prescription, he had a refill of a narcotic drug that I told the nurse not to give him. On top, they ran him under government insurance instead of the insurance card that I gave them through my job. And then on the prescription bottle, it has my address when he was in their custody and not in mine at the time. And when I reached out to a lawyer during the pandemic, the lawyer told me, when the state have your child, they can do what they want. Not only is it okay for our very own law system to frame us under the law, but it's okay for my very own sibling to come to my home unannounced, uninvited, block my car in the driveway, and frame me by saying I have a false mental illness, which in fact I promote a healthy mental wellness platform. This sibling tried to silence me with profusely refusing to leave. I began to panic from my phone being dead, with beating on my door, flickering my porch lights, and yelling for him to leave. finally left and I thought he was gone for the day, I ran next door to inform one of the two sheriffs that lives next door to me and asked him if he see this sibling's vehicle again, could he please help me, as he confirmed the car and said yes. But that wasn't enough, because this sibling come back a second time with blocking my car in the driveway again, which lets me know he was under the influence of alcohol, something that he drinks a lot. And when I went back to the sheriff for help, this sheriff failed to help me, which led in being one of the biggest destructions of my life. Only two people know where I live, is my parents and this sibling. I have never invited anyone to my home. So when he came and provoked me and I got failed by this sheriff, I then went to go breathe on the main road, minding my business with my car off, as an officer pulls up two parking lots in front of me with their car off, no lights on, because I was never pulled over, come up to my car questioning me. And as you guys can see on the live video, I am informing the officer that the family is at my home, invading my privacy, and won't leave my home. And as the officer was walking up to my car, I went live on Facebook with asking the officer, how did the officer know who I was and how did they know my car? With them stating that they got a call to pull me over. So in my head, just going on a date with an officer from my old community who claimed to see me in traffic and asked me on a date earlier that month, where he also asked me to drink from his straw after I left the ladies' room from taking off my coat and washing my hands. And after I drank from his straw first, I couldn't remember certain parts of our date, nor have I seen him since. And that's been handed over to the authority months ago, and this detective that is over the case still have not contacted me. Day of this destruction, I had also shared on Facebook what this officer had done to me and asked those in my community to share the video. In my head, I'm thinking that the cop is trying to hurt me. So I pull off because, like I state, I was never pulled over. And I refused to stop for an hour until I felt safe. And I felt safe when I began to have 7.7K viewers on my live, and I was all over the news. Yet I still have not heard from that officer since that night, or the detective from the full stories that I turned in about the police officer and this sibling who did this to me. And it's been months, and this detective still will not contact me back, text me back, and when I go to see him, he will not see me in person. The same detective that was assigned to take on this case between me and this officer from the live video of me going on that hour drive and expressing that I had been drugged by a cop was the same detective who was able to retrieve messages from my phone when I handed my phone over to him as evidence. So this officer was able to get messages, current messages, from me and this officer, and I had also turned in old messages from me and this officer from years ago as well. As I'm on the live video, I have to ask my daughter something very uncomfortable, because in that moment, I didn't know if the police were going to harm us, and I didn't know if it was going to be our last day, until the more I began to drive and just had faith that I was safe, and that was determined by my viewers. When that wasn't enough and I came to a complete stop, the officer then come up and purposely bust out my window after already flatting all my tires. And then this family is trying to get me medicated, and they know I am a natural herbalist and that I don't take medicine. Meanwhile, the police officers is asking me more than 5 times who is the president, while I'm telling them that I'm uncomfortable answering that question and would like to be asked something else, as they double cuffed my handcuffs and treated me very poorly on the way to the police station where this sibling had me arrested. Here, state of Ohio, when I went to court the next day, this family leave me with no phone, no wallet to get home. And on top of it, although I still hold full custody of my children, they got my children taken from me and put in the hands of the abusers who put this false mental illness on me. And when that wasn't enough for this sibling, he then goes behind my back and asks the children's service to add him as an emergency on my case when he knew that my children were in the hands of our parent. And even called a second time when I was in the room with the children's service trying to still give them his number to be a part of my case, all the way until the children's service man told him, like, no. And I told him no. And when that wasn't enough and I was released from jail and finally able to go around my children with supervision, I make another live video. And as you can see on my second live, this parent and this sibling is trying to silence me from speaking my truth again. Children's service lady was nice enough to do her own assessment on me as well, with also talking to my mentor and others who, know me by character, with getting very great, outstanding reports. She in fact said I was a whole totally different person from the person she had viewed on live before this sibling came and just made me uncomfortable. That isn't enough. I still have to go through all these uncalled for assessments to get my children back home, on top of make it to their school events, sign them up, and enroll them for school with no vehicle because the police ruined my vehicle. And on top of it, there is no further investigation of this malicious lie that the sibling put onto me. And we live in 2 different cities. I don't have a vehicle because the police ruined it. On top, I haven't been to work in 4 months, so I have no funding. So how am I supposed to get my children back if this sibling ruined everything that I worked hard for and flipped my life upside down with framing me and making me lose everything in one day? How am I supposed to come back from this? Dear state of Ohio, when this isn't draining enough and I have to go in the courtroom to defend myself against this destruction, I am told that I have to take a plea to have a clean record, with them going inside of the courtroom, assassinating my character with false information, stating that I'm on medication, which in fact they all knew that I am a natural herbalist and that I don't take medication, and also are aware that my psychologist had in fact became my mentor, who inspired me to become a book writer and who I inspired being a shaman, master of cult. I am a genius and have a natural gift to understand and master life cycles and karmic cycles, which I'm in fact learning every part of the book of religion and the numeric part of them as well. When they see you intelligent, mentally healthy, and woke, they then try to play you like you're ignorant, full of mental illness, and sleep. And then they want to act like you're on medication when we know medication is the real drug and that marijuana is the real medicine. Because we all know drug medication, there's a limit to overdose. But with marijuana, it's known to cure anxiety and cancers. The state of Ohio, and when your mental manipulation isn't working, I am then told if I go to trial, I will be found guilty from my live content that will be used against me in the court of law. But when I ask for you guys to view my mental wellness platform, which is healthy, give you a letter of my character with being told that I'm inspiring and to keep doing what I do, although my good efforts wasn't enough, because then you can use my same content against me in the court of law to still find me wrong. Meanwhile, neither of the police officers had video cam on that day, and had I not followed my intuition, who's to say what would happen? I can't make this up. State of Ohio, we must agree, these are acts of enslavement under our very own law. And after being forced to take a plea wasn't enough, this sibling who was subpoenaed to court never was investigated nor questioned for his actions and walked away scot-free. And I'm being told that that's just the law, or that's just the system, or they don't have an answer by multiple people who work within our very own government system. And same sibling who shared the same mother as me had also bullied me and my middle brother who shares the same father ever since we were children. And I have a video of it if you guys want to check out my sibling war videos, and that tell you a lot that I've dealt with this sibling. Same sibling who regret having his own children and just say mean, hurtful things about his own children, that I even had to, correct his behaviors and let him know, hey, you should be mindful of what you say. That part of it all is the sheriff who failed me was from the black culture. The officer who drugged me was from the black culture. And this sibling who framed me was from the black culture. And it's depressing enough when the mothers are already single mothers and have to miss work, lose funding, and travel all over the world doing these uncalled for assessments for one malicious lie that is brought onto them, as if being a single mother isn't enough, from the fathers either being in jail or ruled out as a cold case, because people are getting away with malicious crimes and acts that is being swept under our law by our law system in the state of Ohio. State of Ohio, how is it that the fathers can go to jail for drug cases? You take the funding instead of putting it on their child support or giving it to the mother. You keep the money, let the child starve, and when the mother don't have money to take care of the child, you then take the child out the home, but that money you took from the father could have helped the mother out. We all are aware that the Bar of Association just give you the runaround and just appoint you to call anyone, and these lawyers don't give a darn about our traumas or our abuse. They just say things like, oh, you reached your limit, or there's not really nothing we can do, because they don't want to take on our cases pro bono. And as we have to live this sad, traumatic enslavement type of life in the poverty area, living under the laws of state of Ohio, it's sad that the other race of women from the white race could come to the black community and play the race card with bringing their wrongful, criminal, ill intentions and activities to the black community, and their actions are being swept under the rug. Myself, along with a lot of other people in the community, witnessed these behaviors for women able to come in our communities and play the race card. One, for example, had even made an allegation against her child's father, and said that he physically harmed her, and he ended up on Crime Stoppers, and the Ohio law was named after her. On top of it, she then said that a family member of mine had drugs and a gun in a home that he was in with another woman, getting that other woman's house raided, getting her windows busted out her home, and this family member going to prison for 3 years for having drugs on him. And when that wasn't enough, the same woman had also gotten away with a murder of, her spouse, who I was really good friends with and happened to be on the phone with when he told me to hold on and never click back over. He never clicked back over because in that short period of time, he had lost his life in the hands of this woman who got away with it, and the police had all the witness, had calls stating what happened from witnesses, had all evidence that they needed to arrest her. That wasn't enough. She waits till I go get my hair done and really big and pregnant to come in a shop with a fully loaded gun at the top of her purse, with also being very disrespectful in front of me, stating that people is accusing her for things and that she took a lie detector test, and just bringing a lot of drama in front of me with a loaded gun in her purse while I was pregnant. Where is the DA? Who do we talk to? How are things like this getting ignored under our law system? And they have everything that they need to arrest these people who are committing these crimes in our communities. The state of Ohio, we want to know, how is our family members perfectly fine after surgery, and by the time the family members make it to their front door, they have lost this family member that was just fine before leaving the hospital? I myself witnessed this twice with my own child's grandmother, and a very great friend of mine who went into surgery, was just perfectly fine, and ended up losing their lives by the time their family members made it home. We want to know what is going on, state of Ohio. And then we are told, oh, you can't do anything about these acts because you reached your limits. And when we bring awareness to these actions, is, oh, call this person, oh, report it to here, and then we get ignored. Our time limit runs out, where now they're telling us, oh, you reached your time limit, you can't get a lawyer anymore, and you can't get justice for the abuse and the traumas that our very law is putting on to us. And we know in the poverty area, no lawyers is taking us on pro bono and could care less about our traumas. So what are we supposed to do when we have to go up in front of the people who is putting the traumas and the abuse on us and is framing us? And how are we going to win a case, state of Ohio? Just how are we going to win a case when you are the people that we go in front of? Don't you call that enslavement? Anyone out here knows who I need to talk to about getting awareness for my community in the state of Ohio and how we are being ignored. Please help me find who I need to find so we can bring love, light, peace, and awareness back to our state and back to our communities so we can have healthier families, healthier children, and healthier selves, because we are tired of being abused and mistreated and overlooked. We are citizens and we should be treated as citizens. Because acts like this is being ignored and swept under the rug, I've lost everything that I've owned in one day. I have not been at work in 4 months. The police totaled my car, and I still have to get my children back. The fact that my son is a diabetic, so if I lose my job and can't go back to work, I can't afford his insulin because I'm not on any government assistance. Family know this. This is why I don't understand why they would take something to the extreme instead of not speaking to me if they don't like my calling and what I do. State of Ohio. Stay tuned for my next video about the job employments and how we are being underpaid, overlooked, disrespected, and neglected in the workplace areas, especially in the nursing homes. Because, this big destruction and trauma was caused onto me and me losing everything, I've hit a point where I'm very uncomfortable because I kind of like to depend on myself and take care of myself. But now I'm at rock bottom and I hit a point where I'm needing help. If you guys want to send a small donation, don't matter how much, just the small things, the small blessings are just as big as the big ones. If you guys want to Cash App Jocelyn Lewis and make a small donation. If not, that is fine. I just thank you for your support, for watching my video, and please just feel free to subscribe if you don't mind, to help the mental wellness community and our youth. And also, I wish you guys just love, light, and abundance. Feel free to like, share, and comment.